request from our dear Ryan
Uh-huh.
in-house.
Oh, yeah.
He wanted to know about Steve Winwood and the song Higher Love.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. Now, for those of you who don't know this song, there's an incredible drum intro. I highly recommend going to download the song. Pay for it, of course. And it's called Higher Love by Steve Winwood. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
When was that recorded and where?
It was recorded at Unique in New York City in 1986, I think 86. Sometimes I forget.
Okay.
I was actually in New York doing a George Benson record.
Okay.
And Russ Titleman called me and said, John, you got to come over and listen to these tunes by Steve Winwood. I go, all right, great, I can do this tomorrow. So I went over, and the first track he put up was Higher Love. There was no vocal. There was a Jimmy Braylauer kind of a perk loop going on that he had, great drum programmer, but it wasn't really drum based, you know. It wasn't like oosh, bap. It wasn't that thing.
Right.
And there was no Nile Rodgers on guitar, and Steve Winwood playing the synth bass, and it was funky. And I was like, I have to play on this. I have to play this. Teacher.
Yeah, right.
And Russ says, okay. And then I heard some other stuff, and I ended up playing 5 songs on that record. One was Back in the High Life, and The Finer Things Keep Shining, and they're all #1 records. Well,
Fantastic.
Higher Love was huge, and still is this day, and the great Chaka Khan sang backgrounds. So
wow. So how did you come up with that
intro?
famous drum intro?
That came later.
You're like the intro guy, aren't you?
I'm
Like
the setup.
Mr. Setup, I love it.
Dr. Setup.
Mr. Intro.
Well, and I have a theory about intros. So my theory is that in those days, they're still spinning up, DJs are still spinning up records. I took the liberty to give at least 2 beats before most songs. Some were none. You know, if we're counting 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, boom.
Right.
Or 1, 2, 1, 2. Some sort of fill coming into it. Fills like Ain't Nobody that's what, 10, 12 seconds of drums. That's unheard of. I mean, you know, the old adage is, you know, you're driving in your car and, you know, 73 degrees. And,
right.
And, you know, here's the new drum intro by John Robinson. But in reality, you're driving in your car and it's 73 degrees in the city. And here's the new single by Steve Winwood.
Right.
You know, so the drummers don't get any props on that. So I ended up cutting the track, kick, snare, and hat cymbals. I did some tom overdubs. Then I did some timbale-ish fills, but not on the snare drum, on a small tom. And then I'm just messing around with that beat with the snares off. And I see I hear the talkback go down, and Steve goes, John, do that, do that. And I go, what? Oh, do what you're playing. I will go and give you a new track. So I went back in the top and played it. But as you hear it, there's a weird time change. I think it's like 3 bars of 4 and a bar of 5/8 or something. Well, that's actually an edit that came from later that Tom Lord Alge did and put it back in the front.
Right, right.
And that's where the magic came.
Got it. So please go check that out. It's one of the classic fills, one of the classic intros of all time for us drummers.